Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the newest edition of AmiSights. I'm Ami Kassar, your host, along with my co-host, Lynn Ozer, aka SBA Queen. Super happy.
Technology expert.
Yeah, and CTO of our company.
LOL.
Super happy to have my friend and forum mate, Elizabeth Convery here. Elizabeth has an amazing career, building one of the premier real estate agencies in Philadelphia, and now evolving to really follow her passion of helping coach the real estate agents. And we're going to have a nice chat with her all about the transition she's going through, how she's got there, what she's trying to accomplish, and her entrepreneurial journey. So, Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
Cool.
Certainly is. I want you to start at the beginning. Tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. I always love to know, when did you realize that the entrepreneurial bug had bitten you?
Wow. So I think that's such a good question. I was probably like maybe 8 years old, something like that.
Wow. Okay.
I always had a business. My girlfriend and I, Nicole, were still best friends since we were 4 years old. We were the only girls in our neighborhood, and they were all boys. We grew up in suburban New Jersey. And we were always like creating a business and selling things to these boys. And they would buy anything. It's like crafts, lemonade, there was always something. But I didn't become an entrepreneur right out of college. I went and worked in corporate America for about 10 years before I officially launched a business. And it was such a great foundation for me because I saw a lot of things and figured out what I was good at and what I liked. And I looking back, I'm really big into research. It probably was a 10-year research phase for me without even realizing it.
What were you doing? Where did you work?
So my career has always been in real estate. I graduated from St. Joe's with a degree in finance and economics. And I started in commercial real estate appraisal for Standard & Poor's. And then I moved over to the investment side of the business, and I worked in acquisitions for a company based out of London, Grosvenor Investment Management. Went to grad school and then moved to New York and was a broker with Jones Lang LaSalle selling hotels. So I sort of had this commercial real estate path that was valuation, acquisitions, and then brokerage. And ultimately, when I made the leap into my own business, it was in the realm of brokerage.
Great. So what pushed you to take that leap into your own world?
My dad.
Oh, okay. Good. Tell us more.
So I was, sorry, Ami, what'd you say?
Talk about that.
Yeah, so I was working in New York. I was, after grad school, I went to grad school for hospitality with a focus in real estate finance and investment. So I wanted to marry hotels and real estate. So I took a job in New York. I'd always wanted to live in New York. It was like a childhood dream. So I did it. I'm really glad that I did. It toughened me up a lot. So I'm working in brokerage in New York. I'm selling hotels, this seemingly like very glamorous job, right? I participated in the largest, it was the hotel deal of the year in 2012. I was on the deal team selling the Essex House in Central Park South. So it was this super glamorous job in a lot of ways for somebody in their late 20s. But I was so unhappy. I mean, I was coming back to Philadelphia a lot. A lot of my girlfriends were getting married. I was like constantly coming down for weddings and, bridesmaids fittings and all these things. And I was sort of at this point in New York where I'm like, gosh, I don't really love what I'm doing. I'm not making any kind of difference in anybody's life. I'm really just making people very rich. And that was just not satisfying me at that point. And so I'm really close with my parents. I called my dad and I'm like, I don't know. I can't keep working for somebody else. Like, this is so hard. I don't see myself becoming, more senior in this role. And so I started really doing a lot of brainstorming, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And my dad was like, Elizabeth, you are 29 years old. What is the worst thing that happens if you start a business and you fail? Like, you have a network, you've gone to good schools, you have money saved. Give yourself a year. And if you can't cut it as an entrepreneur, go get a job, but like, go and do it. And that wasn't enough for me. And he kept pushing me. And finally, his offer was this. He said, start your own business. I will give you what my dad was retired at the time. He said, I'll give you 1 year and I'll help you build it. And that was the kick that I needed into entrepreneurship. And so my dad gave me actually 7 years helping me build my business. And then finally it was like, I'm going back to retirement. I really appreciate helping you, but you don't need me anymore. And I didn't need him for a long time, but it was so much fun to see my dad in that role and work with him.
So
That's
tell us about
terrific.
tell us about those first 7 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my background, I told you, was commercial real estate. I told you that I wanted to make a difference and I found that I wasn't. So I started doing a lot of brainstorming and decided I wanted to make the leap from commercial into residential, because then I could really take everything that I learned and help people buy houses, help people realize, that quote unquote American dream. And so I thought, there's a way to do this. I'm going to come back to Philadelphia. I'm going to do it a little differently than maybe some of the brokerages that were there at this time. This was 2013. So it was very different landscape than it is now. And I had no idea what I didn't know. And I think that's what helped me, right? That I took the leap into owning my own business, but I really didn't know what that entailed at all. And thank God I didn't, because I don't think I would have become an entrepreneur. I'm one of those people that, like, if I knew too much, I would be too scared, right? So those first 7 years, Ami, were a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of like, maybe this will work. Let's see if this works. I don't know about that. Let's try this, right? And it was a lot of failing forward. So I'd fall and I'd get up in a different place. And it was a little bit better than where it was, right? And I just
love
thought,
that.
"Okay, let me try it again." And then I
Love
would
that saying.
fall again. But those failures, those missteps, looking back, I'm like, okay, that has shaped where I am today.
Yeah.
Tell us
Was it-
tell us some of the milestones of those first 7 years. What happened? Give us some of the ups and the downs.
Yeah. So I came into the Philadelphia market, got my real estate brokerage license because I had the experience to, to sit for the broker test. My dad he was in insurance his whole career. He had a license, a real estate license, since the 80s, always on the side. So I hold his license and he helps me set up, he was a manager. He ran a division for a large property and casualty insurance company. I didn't know how to manage people at all. None. I was a deal junkie. So I knew how to get clients. And so that's what I started doing. I had so many coffees in the beginning. I mean, I was like so coffeeed out. I mean, just meeting people, getting my name out there, doing all of these things. And it took almost an entire year until I had my first sale. So I left New York in spring of 2013. Because of the licensing laws in Pennsylvania, I wasn't able to open my business until October of 2013. So that's when Very Real Estate started, October of 2013. I didn't have my first sale until April of 2014. But I had a huge pipeline. And I remember turning to my dad in this little office that we were co-sharing with another company. And I said, well, I can either pay my mortgage this month or I can eat. What do you think's the best thing to do? And he looked at me and he said, Elizabeth, I know you don't know this because I was always like in corporate America. Paychecks would come in, I'd pay all my bills on the first of the month. He said, call your mortgage company. I bet if you pay it by April 15th, it was April, you won't get a penalty, you won't hit your credit. Just push it right up to the end. And I didn't even think to ever do that. And so I had my first closing, I think it was like April 12th. And I paid my mortgage like April 14th. And after that first year in business, I did $5 million of sales, which was a lot for someone right out of the gate at the time, right? I mean, remember 2013, this was before social media became a place to get business, right? It was a very different environment. So that was one of the first, failing forward, was believing enough in myself that I would figure it out if I got down to the line. I also brought on a lot of people in the early days to grow my team, and it wasn't strategic and it wasn't thoughtful. And I learned that over the years, that you have to find your ideal client avatar, but you also, as a team lead in real estate, I had to find my ideal teammate too. And that required me to figure out what the culture of the firm was and what my leadership style was. So those were a few things that happened in the first 7 years that I think set me back, but also propelled me forward.
So how did you learn? Trial and error? Did you take leadership courses? What was the thing that changed that you started to be able to pick out or knowing what your culture really was about?
Yeah. So I always had coaches, right? I've always had coaches my whole entrepreneurial career. But in about, I would say 2015, 2016, my business was 3-ish years old. I read a ton of books. And I was reading this one book, and I found this statistic that only 3% of women-owned businesses ever make $1 million or more a year. And I was sickened by it. I thought that's really small, but then I was charged by it. So I wrote 3% on my whiteboard in my office, and I started to do some research to figure this out. And in doing this, and this is how I met Ami, I found EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and I found that in the Philadelphia chapter in 2016, they were launching an accelerator. And the accelerator was for small businesses under $1 million of revenue, which was very clearly me, to get, to that $1 million mark. And I think when I applied for it, I just was over the minimum revenue hurdle, which maybe, Ami, I think it was like $300,000. I mean, it was tiny.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it wasn't tiny. I mean, that's a good amount of revenue, right? But for where I wanted to go, it was small. And so by joining this accelerator group and it was a small group coaching model of, entrepreneurs in different industries with a coach who was an EO member. And this EO member taught me about culture, taught me about core values. He showed us why you have to have plans, right? Strategic plans. And that's how I started to learn by observing others, right? Reading books, observing others, watching my dad, who had, run a division. He was a great manager to learn from. And I made a ton of mistakes. But when I was making the mistakes, I remember I was like really beating myself up about it. And now I beat myself up less, but I still beat myself up, right? But, my husband has a phrase, and he says, you either have a bad day or you learn something. It's either you have a good day or you learn something. And so basically there's no such thing as a bad day. And when I started to kind of reshift my mindset around that, I thought, okay, what can I learn from these mistakes?
Right. That's a great way to look at things.
It's super interesting. I mean, I look back at my dad, and I loved him. He passed 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago. And he never wanted his kids to face failure because he never wanted us to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we all do that as parents, right? We never want our kids to feel any hurt or any pain. But the reality is failure is part of success. And I like to say that if I make 51% of the right decisions, I'm doing pretty well.
Oh, it's so true. I mean, and the reality is so many people I've observed, they're just too afraid of failure to take any kind of jump. So, and I find myself doing that sometimes, right? Where it's like, I'm very comfortable here. I'm going to be okay. But it's in jumping out of that comfort zone that you start to really feel the growth. And in order to do that, you have to be able to overcome that hurdle of fear and know that you're going to fail. I mean, who hasn't failed?
What made you feel like it was okay for Dad to leave? Like you said, he stayed longer than you really needed him. But how did you know that you were okay?
We had an argument one day, and it was over money. And my dad is very fiscally conservative, and I am too, right, in many ways. And his fiscal conservatism really helped us as we bootstrapped the business. I mean, really everything that we didn't take on investors, everything that we were building, we were using the cash from the business to do. So I think it took a longer time for us to build. Now I understand the importance of debt, strategic debt, thoughtful investments, all of these things. But after I had gone through this EO accelerator program, and one of the things that they taught us to do was, manage cash and all of those things. And one day I went to him and I said, I'm going to hire this person to help me with this. And I forget exactly what the person was, but I remember that the cost of it was pretty significant. It was like bringing on, it's maybe $4,000 or $5,000 a month to invest. And my dad said, well, we can't afford that. And I said, well, yes, we can. And he said, no, because he was so afraid that if we took on something like this, it would really impact the cash in the business. And of course it would. But I said, no, you have to look at it as an investment in the business, that if we spend $5,000 and it helps me do this, this, and this, I should make revenue of 20. And so it's going to pay for itself. And it was funny. It was in that moment. And he looked at me and he said, you really don't need me anymore.
There
And
you
I
go.
knew I didn't,
Good.
but I needed him to know that, right? And I
Yeah.
said, no, Dad, I need you in so many other ways.
Yeah.
But let's, and so he stayed along in the business for as long as he wanted to. But then
Yeah,
when
that's
COVID
fine.
hit
Yeah.
and, we were locked down and all of these things, he said, I'm going to retire at the end of the year from Very. And I said, okay.
Mhm.
And we had put this champagne aside when we started the business in 2013. And it was like a Grand Dame Veuve Clicquot. And so it was this very expensive, beautiful bottle of champagne. And on it, on a rubber band and a sticky note, it said 1 million. And we put it on the top of the bottle, and we put it in the refrigerator. And we hit that number, and over that, of course. And well, I shouldn't say of course, we did. I mean, we got there.
That's wonderful.
And
Yeah.
we forgot, we were so busy doing it. Like I was so busy doing it, I forgot about the wine. And so
Right.
when my dad retired, we opened the bottle and we have this great picture of us toasting to this. And it's funny how when you are building something, at least for me, when I'm building something, I completely forget sometimes to celebrate the successes along the way because you're so focused on the goal. And so
Right.
now I run a coaching program. And one of the things that I have the women in the program do every time we meet is celebrate the win. I
Yeah.
say to them, well, what did you do this week you want to celebrate? Because I
Right.
was so bad at doing that.
Right. Yeah.
So Elizabeth,
But
let's
it's
talk about
important.
your transition. You built this great real estate agency in Philadelphia, still there. But now you had this itching for something more, something different, or something else. Talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm finding that my career, every 10 years, I get the itch to do something else, right? So my first 10 years, I started Very Real Estate when I was 30. I was the first independent brokerage in Philadelphia to partner with Compass when they came to the market.
Oh,
It was a huge win for us. I ended up on the cover of Inman News, which is a residential real estate publication that's an authority in the residential space online. And I got to this point where I was turning 40, right? So it was kind of my late 30s. And I became the version of the woman I wanted to be. And that I thought was so cool, right? But then I went through this kind of, but who am I going to be next? And where am I going to go next? And so I did a lot of exploring, not dissimilar to what I did in my late 20s. Where do I want to be for this next decade? And I had transitioned my business to a point where I wasn't selling real estate much anymore. I was doing maybe 5 transactions myself a year just to stay fresh, but my team was running my business and I was coaching and mentoring and managing the team and working, of course, on business development and client relations and those things. But when I was in my late 30s, I started to think, okay, well, what's the next version of Elizabeth Convery? Who am I going to be next from 40 to 50? And I thought about all the things that I was good at and all the things that I really loved about the business that I had built. And when I started the business, it was I wanted to make a difference in clients' lives. And I did that so many times, right? But then as I grew the business, I saw that I was really good. I became a great manager. And I realized I was really good at teaching others how to build a business too, how to build a real estate practice too. And so I decided that through a lot of searching, I figured out, you know what? I want to help more women design the life that they want and use real estate sales to fuel it. And so I started doing more and more research, and I decided to launch an online course and coaching program to help women in the early stage of their real estate career figure out how to monetize it at a high level and control their time so that whatever priority they have, they can own it. And so that's how I transitioned into this new phase. I turned 40 last year and launched the business in October of 23. October seems to be my month. October of 2013, I launched Very. October of 2023, I launched The Confident Agent. We'll see what I do 10 years from now.
That's terrific. So
How's it
do you
going so
manage Convery now, or is managed?
I do. So I still manage Very Real Estate. It's based out of Philadelphia. Our team now spans from South Jersey to Paoli and everywhere in between. We're very focused on the experience of buying and selling a house. When I started in 2013, experiential sales, people didn't really talk about that. They talk about it now all the time. So I'm glad everybody's up to speed. So I still manage the team, but a lot of my time is focused on building the coaching platform and the business there. So I coach 23 women currently. Across 2 different programs. My goal is to grow the program to 100 women this year.
Whoa. You can't possibly do one-on-one coaching with 100 women.
No, I don't do one-on-one coaching at all. So I do one-on-one coaching with my team.
Right.
Meet with them each week one-on-one. But with this business, it's all group coaching. And I find the group coaching model to be so impactful. Here's why. When I started this idea of building this online course for women with a coaching component, I told you I love research. I spoke to over 50 women last summer.
Wow.
50 women, one-on-one via Zoom. I asked them a series of questions, wondering what it will take to help them get to where they want to be. And some of the questions were like, what training are you currently doing? Do you have any coaches? What podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading? And I learned through this experience that so many women feel like they're the only one. Men probably feel the same way, but my research was based with women. I'm the only one going through this problem. I'm the only one who's not finding success in this business. I go into the office and everybody's doing more than I am. And it sparked something in me. I thought women need a community of others who are at similar stages. And so the coaching model is group coaching because it allows women to experience together similar issues, right? Similar challenges. Hear how somebody's overcoming something. Get an idea from somebody else as they're saying things that have worked for them. And then the coaching is me sort of facilitating and guiding that experience for them.
So great. It's terrific.
Elizabeth, how is 2 questions. How's the transition been? And how are you managing to run 2 businesses at once?
The transition requires a lot of discipline that I fortunately have learned how to master. I will say, I think masterfully discipline describes me really well. I'm not only managing 2 businesses, but I'm managing 2 children and a military spouse. So I feel like our life itself is a transition all the time.
Yeah.
So I've gotten really clear on what my priorities are, what hats I should and should not be wearing. I'm great at delegating. I subscribe very much to the who, not how mentality of like, okay, we've got to get this done, but I'm probably not the one to do it. So let me find who is, hire them or train them or bring them on to do it. So the transition, it's rocky, Ami. From time to time, you really can get pulled down into the minutia. And I find myself when I'm getting pulled down, recognizing it faster and then pulling myself back up to say like, oh, no, this is what today's priority is. And this is how it will be. I think having a business that's so established has really helped me to launch a second business. And what I mean by that is I've built my first business over 10 years with the goal of it not really needing me much. I had a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur too. He said, having a business is like having a child. And in the early days of a business, it's like having a newborn. Only you can do certain things. But now I have a 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old. And so will the business eat on its own? Yeah. I mean, will the business be okay if I go away for a couple of, absolutely, you know, and that's part of my visionary leadership is empowering people to make decisions on their own without me. And that has definitely helped in the transition. So I would say discipline, radical discipline, and having the confidence that people can do things even if it's not me. And it might not be the way I would do it, but it's going to get done.
Letting go. Yeah.
I have a much less diplomatic. You say it much nicer than I do. I just say I'm always trying to get myself fired.
Yeah.
Same idea, though,
ways.
right? Same idea. Like people constantly, when people come to me with decisions that I don't think I have to be involved in, I'll simply answer, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And then eventually they stop coming.
They get the hint.
Well, that's empowering. There you
Right.
go.
That's empowering.
Elizabeth, what's your vision for 3 years, 5 years from now? What do you want to be happening?
Sure. So I want to see Very Real Estate continue to hold its place in the Philadelphia market and grow the team strategically and thoughtfully. I'm not looking to have a team of 25 realtors at Very. It's really 10 strong, collaborative team members who are really dominating their market share in the markets that they know really well. It's to grow the Confident Agent to be a premier foundational program for women entering the real estate space, showing them that they can have the life that they want and that they are confident enough to do it, so long as they're brave enough to jump over those hurdle fears. And I want to take that program, you know, from 100 women this year to 1,000 women in 3 to 5 years, and be a part of that vision and show more women that you can get to where you want to go, but it's so important to bring women behind you as well. And I think that that's what the community we're building with the Confident Agent is, right? It's this evolution of like, okay, I'm new to the business and I'm coming up, but I'm going to bring somebody behind me. And that's the community that we have, is really helping one another. And I think that that's, to me, that's the greatest thing I can do in the next decade, is give back and impact in that way.
I have a question. You had said earlier in the conversation that way back when you started your business, there wasn't much social media. How has all the social media and viewing homes online and all of the lots of people selling by themselves, how has that impacted your business?
Sure. It's funny. My husband is in the Navy and he's not on social media. And I look at him sometimes and I'm like, gosh, how lucky are you that you don't have to make that part of your business? I think it's become, for real estate agents, the place to be, right? You have to have an online presence.
Absolutely.
You have to be authentic online. I think that that's critical for real estate agents, but also for coaches, right? To show yourself. I think we learned during COVID the importance of having an online presence. I mean, in the state of Pennsylvania, we were not allowed legally to show houses. We were a non-essential business. We were, I think, one of the only states in the country that was non-essential for residential sales. So I had been doing for years online tours, you know, video floor plans, elevated photos, all of those things. And that really saved my business, kind of being ahead of that. Now it's very standard, very commonplace to view online, right?
Right.
But I think the real estate agent is still such a critical part of purchasing a property, right? Because pictures don't always tell the story. You don't always know exactly what's going on. I mean, you can't make a cat smell come through in a photo, right? Think of all the things you can go into houses and you're like, ooh, this isn't what I thought. Or
Right.
the Google map didn't really show me that the house next door has both a boat and a boat and an RV in the driveway and landscaping that hasn't been touched in years. Like there's things that I think still require a human touch. But as far as social media and the real estate space, I'm here for it. I think it's really critical. It's not going away, but it has to be managed properly.
Mhm.
Have to give more. For me, I have to give more on social media than take, right? Posting things that are relevant to the people who are following me. I mean, I've gotten clients just from reels that I've done on social media because I'm giving useful and relevant data. And I think if you approach it that way, it's not as bad as like when I said, oh, my husband's not on social media and I'm so jealous. Like there's a lot of things that can happen on social
Yeah,
media.
right.
But you have
Right.
to be able to manage that too.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
It's a balance. You also have to be okay to share personal stuff also.
You do. And that's something that a lot of people in my coaching who I've coached over the years are like, should I not? Should I have a private Instagram for my family and friends? Should I have one for my business? And what I've learned is that, a real estate business, any business, people want to see a real human. And if part of that is I'm a mom, I mean, one of the tenets of my Instagram is like, you go on there today, you can see my children, you can see the struggles that I have with being a working mom, the funny things that they do, but that's authentic. That's me. That's genuine. People buy that because they feel, we know this in sales, people work with people who they like and trust.
Right.
And if you're not going to show that side of yourself, be prepared that, people may not resonate with that, but the right people will.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. You're very busy.
Elizabeth, super proud of you for this transition you've made. It was a budding vision for a long time, and I'm so impressed with how you've evolved it and grown it, and how it's really becoming fantastic. And I think it's amazing. So
Thank you. It's exciting. I mean, it's very exciting. And, it's funny starting a second business after starting a first business, you're so much further ahead because the fear factor is gone in a lot of ways, right? Because you're like, okay, I've done this before. Big can this really
I
big?
know the torture ahead. It's okay.
Exactly.
Is it a fear factor or a risk factor? Ami loves to talk about risk. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, they probably go hand in hand, I would think,
Sure.
to a degree. Yeah.
I don't think you're risk adverse at all.
I don't think I can be at this far along, right?
Right.
Probably I could take more risk, certainly, but I feel good about what I've done so far, and we'll see. I mean, maybe I'll wake up at 50 and be like, all right, I'm going all in on a whole different industry. I've got a really
Watch out for October. I'm not coming to the October forum meeting.
But it's
every
not
10
10
years
years yet,
October. Yeah,
Ami.
every 10 years
It's
October.
not 10
So
years. But
you
yeah,
you've
October 33.
certainly
Watch out.
you've certainly reached your original goal of making a difference, and I think that's so commendable.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's funny, sometimes for me particularly, and I don't know if this is women, we're very humble in a lot of ways, right? And you don't realize the success you've had because you're just doing it. And then you're reminded of it, or you see, I'll see a picture from 8 years ago and I'll think, oh, okay, I've come a little far. What does this look like? What is it going to be next? And my husband's classic for reminding me of things like that in wonderful ways.
Yeah.
And he's like, I do remember when.
I was going to say, when along the journey did you get married? I was just curious.
Yeah. So let's see. So we did not get married in October, I will say.
That's funny.
Just don't change husbands every 10 years, okay?
No, absolutely not. This one's God help him. He's
Deeper.
with me forever. So Chip and I met in 2016. So the business was
The
3 years
business was
old.
started. Yeah.
Yep. And we got married in 2019. So he sort of watched the business come up. And then I really didn't start to hit my plateau, I think, or my acceleration until 2021. So it took a long time to really get the wheel flowing. I had success along the way, but that really kind of skyrocket. So he was there for that journey.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
It's great.
He's
Congratulations.
thank you. We met through real
A
estate.
very-
I mean, I know that's shocking for everyone.
Elizabeth,
Yeah.
how can our listeners find you?
So I live on Instagram, which was a very timely question for you, Lynn. Thank you. So my Instagram handle is at elizabeth.convery. And you can DM me. I run a newsletter that I send out twice a week with tips for women in real estate. It's called the Toolkit for Confident Agents. So definitely reach out on Instagram.
Sounds great.
Awesome. Love it. Elizabeth, I always love talking to you. Thanks for being on the show. Thanks for
It was
joining
so
me.
much fun to hear about your journey. I'm
Thank
very
you. Thanks for
impressed, and
having
I'm
me.
excited about your next iteration. I'll be looking out for you in 2033. God willing, I'm still here.
You will be. Stop.
You will
No
be.
pressure.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and we'll see you real soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.